Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the number of Sudanese uprooted by war has doubled over the last week. More than 700,000 are now internally displaced, with the death toll from the clashes having conservatively passed 600. Also, in an exclusive investigation, our correspondents take a look inside one of Guinea Bissau's only rehab centres, the country's Africa's first narco state. The rising numbers of addicts have few treatment options. And craftswomen in Kisany, DR Congo, hold a community together with their embroidery. Hundreds have learned the delicate art since a small company was set up 2 decades ago to offer hope to women who'd lost everything in an earthquake. But first, Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces still have not replied to the head of the Sudanese army's warning that peace talks being held in Saudi Arabia won't amount to anything unless the RSF pull its fighters out of the Sudanese capital, Khartoum. At least 604 people have died since fighting began in Sudan on April 15th. On Tuesday, the UN's humanitarian chief proposed that the warring forces commit to guarantees of safe passage of aid. There fears that if the fighting doesn't stop by October, over 850,000 people could flee into neighbouring countries. Around 30,000 people have already headed into Chad. Our Carolyn Lambole has more.
Their belongings piled onto a donkey. These refugees have just arrived from Western Sudan. Many are from Tendelti, a small town located about 20 kilometers away. They say that their town was attacked by armed men. The army allegedly fled.
Several houses were burned down. People were scared and decided to flee. The war in Khartoum created a climate of general insecurity. Nowhere is really safe. That's why we left.
With the capital Khartoum, Western Sudan is one of the areas that's been worse hit since fighting broke out in mid-April between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary RSF group. According to the UN, almost 200 people have been killed in the state of West Darfur over the past 2 weeks. On Friday, the state governor accused the RSF group of damaging government offices and setting fires to shelters for displaced communities and looting homes and stores. Each day, hundreds, if not thousands of people are trickling across the border into Chad. UNHCR is working to resettle people in a 50-kilometer radius, far enough to make sure people are safe and close enough to provide them with aid.
If we fail to act now, it will be too late. The rainy season is coming in a few weeks, and if we don't provide any assistance to the people, the road will be blocked and all the refugees here will be stopped.
Already, at least 150,000 people have fled the country.
Some of the bodies found in mass graves linked to a Kenyan suicide cult are missing organs. Another 21 corpses were found, making a total of 133 victims so far, but hundreds of followers of Pastor Paul Mackenzie are still missing. Mackenzie told his congregation to starve themselves to death to meet Jesus. And investigators still exhuming graves in the Shakahola forest say that the dead may have been victims of a highly organised crime. Their suspicions that the operation may have involved forced organ harvesting. Some of the dead, including children, were violently killed. Mackenzie is still in custody. Northern Nigeria suffered another mass kidnapping. At least 40 people have been abducted from a church in Kaduna State. 15 reportedly managed to escape from their captors, but the families of the 25 still missing face a gut-wrenching wait for news. Samuel Okoye tells us more.
The chairman of the Christian Association of Nigeria in Kaduna State, Reverend Joseph Hayab, said the abduction occurred at the Bege Baptist Church, Madala, a remote village in the state. The government attacked the church while the members were having Bible study, preparatory to the commencement of Sunday service. All those in the church, including women, children, and the elderly, were taken away at gunpoint. About 22 of those abducted have escaped, while 20 others are being held hostage. The attack on the church is the latest case of kidnapping by armed groups that are also involved in the mass abduction of school children in north-central and northwest Nigeria. The armed groups called bandits in local parlance have links with local jihadist groups like Boko Haram. Many church priests and church members have either been killed or abducted in recent times. Even though their primary objective is to abduct people for ransom, their attacks on churches and Christian-owned institutions are sometimes seen as having religious undertone. This has a potential for heightening tension between Christians and Muslims in a country where religious crises are common. Influential politician Bola Tinubu will be sworn in as president later this month. He will be under pressure to address Nigeria's growing insecurity, especially the threat by the armed groups involved in these abductions.
Sam Olokoya there for us. Now, Guinea Bissau is widely considered Africa's first narco state. It's long been a top transit point for criminal gangs trafficking cocaine from Latin America to Europe, but the drugs aren't always moved on. They've increasingly leaked into local markets, and addiction levels have risen hugely. Some estimates reckon that between 30 to 40% of the country's young people use hard drugs like crack cocaine. For the addicted, the treatment options are slim. Our correspondents visited one of just 2 rehab centres in the country and found evidence of human rights abuses. Our team reports.
Domingos Tay runs one of Guinea-Bissau's only rehab centres. The Pentecostal pastor claims to have cured thousands of drug addiction and mental illness since 2013.
All those affected by demons, drugs, alcohol or tobacco, let them be healed in the name of Jesus Christ.
Those suspected of relapsing or planning to run away are either locked in cells or chained up. One patient, sent here by his own brother less than a month ago, lives in constant fear.
I don't dare speak because the guard is just behind us. He's walking around. If he hears me speaking, he'll torture us once you leave. Do you understand? I don't want to suffer like this. They haven't even done any blood tests to see if I've health problems. If there were tests, they'd know which medication to give me.
Patients say beatings are frequent. As we prepared to leave, this young man was accused of smoking a cigarette. He was later dragged in chains to a dark cell. We showed the footage to Mamadou Aliou Diallo, who runs a public health NGO working with drug addicts in Bissau.
It's not acceptable. It's very shocking from a human rights standpoint, especially for people who need medical and psychological and social care.
We raised concerns about conditions at the centre with Domingos Tay. He told us he's doing God's work and that the patients are only chained up when they pose a risk to others. After seeing our footage, the UN Human Rights Office is now calling for an official investigation into the centre.
Well, Sam Bradpiece, who's part of the team that shot that report, joins us now from Senegal. Sam, so at the end of that report, you said that there were calls from the UN to launch an investigation. So what did they say when you showed them the footage that you had filmed?
So we showed the UN all of the footage that you've just seen, and they said that the acts on screen could constitute torture, and that's exactly why they're now calling on authorities in Guinea-Bissau to launch an independent and impartial investigation into this centre. They say that those committing human rights abuses should be held to account, and that those still locked up there should be protected from further wrongdoings.
When we were speaking about, some of what you'd seen, you clearly sounded quite shocked at what you'd been exposed to. So how do you think all of this has gone completely under the radar of authorities?
Well, the thing is, we spoke to a number of officials in Guinea-Bissau, and the abuses that happen in this centre do seem to be quite well known. The problem is, what we kept hearing from authorities is that there aren't any alternatives. In reality, there's only one other inpatient centre for drug addicts in Guinea-Bissau. And this centre is about 5 times more expensive. So it's simply beyond the reach of most of the population, which is why so many people end up at that centre in Kinyamel, where all these abuses happen.
So even bearing in mind the fact that maybe people don't really have much of a choice, do you get a sense that families might be aware of the conditions that their loved ones are likely to face in this rehab centre when they send them there?
I spoke to a policeman who sent his cousin to this rehab centre. He'd heard that they weren't great conditions, but he thought it would get his cousin out of his addiction problems. He visited a week later and was shocked by what he saw and immediately took his cousin out. But since then, the two haven't spoken to each other. The policeman's cousin said that he believes he was sent to his death. So that really does give you an impression of just how bad the situation is. I think the more people know about what happens in this centre, the less likely they are to send their loved ones there. And in fact, that's what I'm hoping for.
Some bad piece there for us. Now, in DRC, after an earthquake shook the city of Kisany 20 years ago, 3 Belgian women created a small company to help those who had had their lives turned upside down by the natural disaster and tried to help them gain some financial autonomy. Today, more than 200 women have been trained in luxury embroidery with their work shipped around the world. Our correspondent tells us more.
With deft hands and precise stitches, Esther exercises embroidery skills that she's honed over a 15-year career. Even with her expertise, it will take her a whole day to finish this piece.
This is a little tree. The secret to a beautiful embroidery is using good quality thread and making sure it stays well centered, stitch after stitch. If it doesn't fit, I start over. Everything must be perfect.
Her work is meticulous. Every thread has its place. In total, 22 embroiderers work in this studio in Goma. The most experienced help the beginners.
Look, your thread must go through there. Embroidery takes time. If you do not have the patience, you just can't do it.
Before they're embroidered, patterns are first carefully drawn on high-quality linen imported from Belgium.
You can only find this quality of linen here. Other workshops copy our kits and everything, but our fabric makes all the difference.
The enterprise was set up after a nearby volcanic eruption in 2002 devastated communities here. The business was a way to professionally and personally help women who had lost everything. Tengeneza started embroidering 10 years ago after her husband died.
I found myself alone with my 5 children and my husband's debts. I sold the piece of land we owned in our village. Thanks to embroidery, I can take care of myself and my children's education. I'm very proud.
More than 200 women have been trained in luxury embroidery.
This is one of our towels. It has an ethnic pattern.
The embroiderers of Kisany are proud of their artistry and of their impact. Their work is sold locally and exported around the world, including across Europe and the US.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Till then, take care.